Hello all and welcome back. Today we are diving into a super important topic for VBA enthusiasts, and the topic is why should you avoid using .activate, .select, ActiveWorkbook selection or similar kind of commands. If you have ever found yourself frustrated because of, let's say, slower macro or strange bugs, then it could be because of these commands. They may look simple, but trust me, they are not. They turn your code into a mess, making it harder to read, slower to run, or even prone to errors. In this video, I'm going to show you how to avoid using these commands and to, more importantly, replace them with better and efficient code. So please stick around and you will find a lot of help here which will take your VBA skills to the next level. When you record a macro, you'll often see commands like .select or .activate peppered throughout the code. For example, if you want to add data to a cell, the recorded macro might look something like as shown in the first procedure macro 1. On the surface, this seems fine. However, there are multiple issues here. Every time you use .select or .activate, VBA is forcing Excel to make the range or sheet active. This takes up processing time, especially if your workbook is large or if your code iterates through multiple cells or sheets. Each .select command is an extra step that slows down your code significantly. Think of .select like taking the long way home. Let's say you want to go from point A to point B, but instead of going directly, you decide to stop at every point along the way. That's exactly what happens when you use .select. You're telling Excel, go here, do this, then go there, do that, when you could just give it directions and save time. Also, .select and .activate make your code depend on what's active at that moment. For example, if the user accidentally clicks away to another sheet or range while your macro is running, your code might throw an error. This makes it less reliable because you're relying on a specific state of the interface. Using .select and .activate can also introduce errors when unexpected situations arise, such as if a worksheet is hidden or deleted. Let's take a scenario to understand this. Let's say sheet 1 is hidden. So when this code runs, it will fail with a runtime error. Specifically, runtime error 1004 select method of worksheet class failed. Let's test this. So I'm going to go back to the workbook and I'm going to hide sheet 1. Let's go back to the code and now we are going to run this code. See, we get an error. Runtime error 1004 select method of worksheet class failed. And that is failing on the line sheets sheet1 dot select. Let's go back and let's unhide that worksheet. Similarly, if sheet 1 has been deleted either accidentally or as part of another process, you will encounter another runtime error, which is runtime error 9 subscript out of range. This happens because the code is trying to reference something that no longer exists. So if I go ahead in a file, let's say delete this, and if I run this code, I will get that subscript out of range error. I'm going to go back and insert sheet 1 once again. One more thing, when you use .select, it's harder to read and understand what actually is being done. You need to trace through which cell or sheet is being selected at each step, making it difficult to debug or modify. In this particular scenario, there are only 3 lines. But imagine you have a procedure which has more than, let's say, 20-30 lines. It'll be difficult to read and understand what exactly is going on in that procedure if you have a lot of .select, .activate, etc. So how do we prevent these errors or write better code? The key is to directly work with the object you need. Instead of selecting a range and then performing an action on it, you can directly refer to that range and do what you need. So let's go ahead and let's rewrite this particular code. So I'm going to delete this particular part. Dot value is equal to hello. Right. There's one dot which is missing here. And we are done. In this version, we directly access range A1 on sheet 1 and set its value to hello. This approach is faster, more readable, and does not depend on what the user has selected. So if I go ahead and if I run this, you will notice it has written hello to cell A1 without selecting this sheet. Let's do another test. I'm going to delete this and I'm going to select sheet 2 now. So I'm going to run this code again and see this is not selecting anything, but it will still write to sheet 1. See? Let's go through some more examples comparing code that uses .select and .activate with code that doesn't. Let's open up module 2. Here I have a piece of code which copies data from one sheet to another. This is something which a typical recorded macro might look like. This code is doing a lot of unnecessary selecting and activating, which can be easily simplified. So how do I do that? Sub sample and then start typing. I'm writing it in a separate procedure so you can see what exactly I have done here. Dot range A1 to A10 and dot copy. Then sheet 2 destination is equal to sheet 2 dot range B1. So this code does the same thing as this code, which is it copies data from sheet 1 to sheet 2, but without selecting anything. It's more efficient and less prone to errors. So let's test this. So I'm going to go to sheet 1 and let's say I type 1, 2, and then up till 10 because we are copying from A1 to A10. So this is what we have here. In sheet 2 there's nothing. So let's go back and I'm going to run this. And you will notice that the data has been copied from A1 to A10 to B1 to B10. That's what this code is doing. Let's take another example. Let's head over to module 3. Here I have a code which loops through cells. In the example 1 procedure, the range A1 to A10 is referenced directly without specifying a particular worksheet. This means that range A1 to A10 will refer to the active sheet. Now, this can be a problem because this can lead to unpredictable behavior if the user has a different sheet active when the macro runs. Also, the use of select and selection introduces inefficiencies because VBA must constantly switch between selections, which slows down performance and can lead to runtime errors if the sheet changes or the selection context is lost. So let's go ahead and let's fix this. So I'm going to type a separate procedure so that we can do a comparison. Sub looping through cells. We'll declare an object variable ws as worksheet. Set ws is equal to sheet 1 dim rng as range. Set rng is equal to ws dot range a1 to a10. And then the for loop. So I'm going to copy this, paste it here, and then I will edit this. So for each cell in range, I don't need dot select. If cell dot value is greater than 100, then instead of selection, cell dot interior dot color is equal to VB red. In this code, we explicitly declare and set a worksheet. Then we work with the range, which makes the code more predictable and robust. It ensures that the macro works with sheet 1 regardless of which sheet is currently active. Also, by directly working with cell, we eliminate the need for dot select, making the code cleaner and faster. Similarly, relying on ActiveCell, ActiveSheet, and ActiveWorkbook can be risky, especially if your code needs to run in different contexts or if there are multiple workbooks open. Let's understand this by taking an example for each of them. Let's start with an example for ActiveCell. Let's head over to module 4. Let's say you want to enter a value in the cell to the right of the active cell. Now, you might be tempted to do as shown in ActiveCell example, which is ActiveCell.offset 0,1.value is equal to new value. The problem here is that if no cell is active, or if the active cell isn't where you expect, this line will fail or will give you unexpected results. Instead, it is better to explicitly refer to a range. This way, there's no ambiguity about which cell you're working with. The next procedure is about referring to ActiveSheet. If the user has a different sheet active, your code will fail or modify the wrong sheet. Instead, explicitly refer to the worksheet. So you can change this code to worksheets sheet 1 dot range a1 dot value is equal to header. You can make it even more robust by specifying the workbook where this worksheet is. This workbook dot worksheet sheet 1 dot range a1 dot value is equal to header. You can also use sheet code name if you are referring to the worksheet in this workbook. So how do you do that? Simply change this to sheet 1. If you're not sure what sheet code name is, then do watch the video sheets and worksheets and how to reference them. I have explained sheet code name in detail in that video. Remember, explicitly referring to a sheet is much safer because you are specifying exactly which sheet you want. The next example is about using ActiveWorkbook. Let's say you're saving the ActiveWorkbook. Again, this is risky if multiple workbooks are open. Instead, use this workbook.save. This workbook refers to the workbook where the code is running, ensuring that you save the intended file. Now, you may have a question as to when one might use .select or .activate. Well, while it is best to avoid them, there are times when .select or .activate may be useful. For example, user interaction. If your macro needs to interact with the user, for instance, showing them which cell is being edited, then .select can make sense. For example, range a1 dot select and then message box, please review the selected cell. Something like this. You may also want to use .select while debugging. So when you're debugging, you might temporarily use .select to help you visually see which cell or sheet your code is working with. However, these scenarios should be exceptions rather than the norm. Once you have finished debugging, it's best to remove .select and replace it with direct references. There are few other scenarios where you may want to use .select and .activate. For example, when you want to activate a sheet to present to the user. Then there are certain scenarios when you're working with charts. You have to use .select, otherwise the code will not work. But in majority of the cases, you can do away with .select, .activate, ActiveSheet, selection, ActiveWorkbook, etc. So it's best to avoid them and directly work with the objects as I showed you earlier. So we saw using .select, .activate, selection or similar commands can make your VBA code inefficient, slow and hard to maintain. By directly referencing the objects that you're working with, you write cleaner, faster and reliable code. Not only does this improve your performance, but it also avoids bugs or errors that might happen because of unexpected changes to the user interface. So if you have any questions regarding today's video, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. Or you can also email me on support@tamexcel.com. And there's also a Facebook group, so you can post your questions in that Facebook group. The link is in the description below. If you like the way I explain things and if you think I can help you in your quest to learn Visual Basic Programming from scratch, then go ahead, like this video, share it with others, and do not forget to subscribe to this channel. The main benefit of subscribing is that you will instantly get an alert when I release my next video. I would also like to inform you that there is a playlist you can learn at your own pace. If you're serious about learning Visual Basic Programming from scratch, and that too using high quality videos which are absolutely free, then this channel is for you. So please take out time, check out that playlist, and I will see you soon.